If you cannot tell from the complexion of my wife, the embodiment of an Eshet Chayil extraordinaire, and the primary reason I was able to participate in this opportunity, and if you cannot deduce from the sound of our last name, Nooromid, our families have no connection to Europe, to anything Ashkenazi, or with the Shoah. So what motivated me to embark on this journey? For one, Beth Am needed someone as tech support. For the rest of the participants who were of a different generation than I, did you need a WhatsApp poll created, an 8-minute YouTube video uploaded to YouTube, or data roaming turned on so you could receive messages while you were abroad? I was your guy. I was also the surrogate child for nearly 24 Jewish mothers who made sure that I ate and slept as much as humanly possible during an intense 2 weeks traveling across Europe. But also, as in accordance with our tradition, Rabbi Klickfeld did not want to yet again be the youngest one to recite the Manish Tanah at next year's reunion Seder for the trip. So it was a perfect opportunity to have him recruit me to join him. But in all seriousness, when I learned that Rabbi Dr. Berenbaum was guiding the first week of this trip, and I used both titles here because he was equally a Rav during our sojourn, as well as the scholar of all scholars. I knew I could not let this March of the Living Style opportunity evade me yet again, since I wasn't able to participate in both high school and college. And while we at Beth Am know Michael Berenbaum is a pillar of our shul community and of American Jewish University, you cannot fully appreciate his greatness until you have traveled with him through the concentration camps. Every detail, every nuance, every wrinkle, he pointed out and he thoroughly explained to us with equal parts candor and sensitivity. Our group leaders and educators stopped him more than once to introduce him to their group and explain what a global treasury is to the Jewish community and beyond. Even the former president of Ort America and his wife, the former chair of the Jewish Federation's North America Annual Women's Campaign, rearranged their schedules in Krakow so they could tour Auschwitz with our group because they knew who was leading it. Every participant in our group, needless to say, felt like a real VIP. But also, if you were looking to close your rings on your Apple Watch every single day by walking at a 9.5-mile-per-hour pace for nearly 8 hours while simultaneously absorbing the entire compendium of Holocaust and Eastern European Jewish history, there was no better person to try to keep up with than Michael. In Parshat Balak, we encounter a paradox. King Balak hires the prophet Bilam to curse the Jewish people, but instead, blessings pour forth. Time and again, Bilam opens his mouth intending harm, but eventually God turns his words into praise. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, mishkanotecha Yisrael. How goodly are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. This moment is striking. Bilam sees the Israelites not from within, but from a distance. From that vantage point, he sees their unity. He sees their strength, their moral compass. He sees a people who dwell not just physically together, but spiritually aligned with something higher. And yet, this moment of admiration comes within a parsha full of threat, of fear, and of attempted erasure. I thought about this paradox as we walked through Treblinka, Majdanek, Balzit, and Auschwitz-Birkenau, places of not of blessing, but of unimaginable destruction. Unlike Bilam, the evil architects of arguably the most nightmarish, horrific, and still unbelievable sights on earth did not stop at words. They attempted to curse the Jewish people not metaphorically, but physically, systematically, and with terrifying precision. Imagine for a moment if Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Google, and Tesla, among other giants in the tech in other parts of the world, all combined forces in the late 1930s and 40s to do the worst, most nightmarish, most inhumane, most despicable possible things to millions of human beings with the most insane efficiency and efficacy. That's what walking through these camps felt like. It's as if a version of October 7th replayed again and again and again, every single day for years. And yet, as I stood with our group in these former hells on earth, sight soaked with profound suffering and unspeakable sadness, I found myself also encountering echoes of something else: memory, resilience, witness, and strangely even blessings, holiness, and miracles. Balaam, standing apart from the Israelites, tried to see them as enemies, as a threat, as something to be eliminated. But from his vantage point, despite himself, he couldn't help but see the truth: a people with a divine destiny, a people whose tents and dwelling places reflected purpose, compassion, and light. Of course, the Nazis were modern-day Balaks. They feared the Jewish people not for our armies or our weapons, but for our ideas and our success, our Torah, our conscience, our culture, and our hope. They tried to annihilate our legacy, to curse it into oblivion. But thank God, like in the Parsha, their curse failed. When I stood in the crematorium at Majdanek or looked out over the endless shoes at Auschwitz, I didn't feel the power of their curse. I felt the stubborn pulse of Jewish memory, the names of relatives of Beth Am members that were recited, the songs and declarations of Oseh Shalom, Am Yisrael Chai, and Shema Yisrael that were sung and reverberated, the preservation, survival, and establishment of synagogues in both large cities and small towns like Bratislava, Budapest, Krakow, Landkut, Lublin, Prague, Sopron, Shanto, Warsaw, and Zamość, to just name a few, all of different architectural types, styles, and various denominations, many of which that we were privileged and fortunate to daven in. The sheer miracle that not only did our people's existence eventually survive and that the state of Israel emerged, but also that these memorials and these museums exist today with as much evidence and educational resources to depict what occurred, is a miracle. And the inspiring stories told by so many of our very own about how their ancestors survived and persisted. For me, hearing those stories of our community's relatives and the tremendous blessings their example and memory impart on so many of us today was arguably the most impactful part of this travel experience. While we were at Auschwitz-Birkenau, Dr. Berenbaum told us the story of Hugo Lowy, Zichrono Livracha, who was killed for refusing to surrender his talit and his tefillin. As his son Frank said in his address to the March of the Living participants in 2013, no matter how hard they hit him, he protected the sanctity of his talit and tefillin. They could not break his body. They could break his body, but they could not break his spirit. The talit and tefillin were a part of him, part of his relationship with the Ribono Shel Olam, and he was ready to die for them. And he did. For the rest of my life, I will never look at the mitzvah of talit and tefillin the same way ever again. That story, along with so many others, shook me to the core. Just let it sink in for a second. What parts of Jewish ritual life, identity, mitzvot, are we personally willing to live and die for? We are so incredibly fortunate, yet we take the convenience of doing such blessed acts for granted, while righteous people like Hugo literally sacrifice his life for them. While in Warsaw, we visited the Jewish cemetery, and we paid tribute at the graves of Anna Braud-Heller, a pediatrician who ran the Jewish Children's Hospital in the Warsaw Ghetto, and her sister, Sarah Aftergut, and niece Steffi, who were the great-grandmother and great aunt of Beth Am members Aaron Aftergood and Hannah Reinstein, our future, or actually current now incoming PA president of Pressman Academy. It was a great privilege to hear their father, Dr. David Aftergood, speak about his relatives and learn more about their legacy. We also stopped at the Holocaust Memorial in Zolkiekwa, which was Rebecca Friedman's paternal grandparents' hometown, and we learned about how Rebecca's father in the early 1990s documented over 300 relatives, including 7 generations that were all in Zolkiekwa. While there, we saw not one, but 2 rainbows stretching in full arc, and we said, of course, the bracha. In Bratislava, Deborah Cheriton visited sites that her great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, and great-great-great-grandmother lived, prayed at, and are buried in, and Rabbi Kligfeld recited the El Mali Rakamim in their memory. And though we didn't get to visit his hometown, while we traveled through the Slovak Republic, I had the chance to start reading the autobiography of Egon Stoyer, Zichrono Livracha, father of my friends Michael and David Stoyer, who is also a Holocaust survivor. These are just a handful of the many blessings we experience as a group on this trip. And it doesn't even scratch the surface of the other deeply inspiring moments you can read about in the blog if you haven't already done so. Among other highlights and immense privileges we had, we participated in a 700-person Shabbat dinner in Krakow, which prior to, when we were at the Reformed congregation there, we also heard the tune of a Shamru to Rabbi Moshe Rothblum's version. We personally connected with and prayed for black hat descendants of the Chatam Sofer while at his grave. Rebecca Friedman was the first ever person in 499 years to lead a service in the female section of the medieval Old Synagogue in Chopron. And we visited the very chuppah, exactly this time last Shabbat in Budapest, that Robert Kassir's grandparents got married under at the Orthodox synagogue. Like Balaam's words, the evil intended was inverted, not erased, not excused, but transformed. Because our being in each of the 4 concentration and extermination camps in each current or former Jewish town, walking, remembering, mourning, living, all of those acts were in and of themselves a defiance of the curse. A blessing was born from our witness. Balaam saw the people from the heights, from a distance. The nations of the world often see us that way too. We're abstracted, politicized, misunderstood, and the death camps were consequences of what happens when people are viewed as the other, as not fully human, and as a problem to be solved rather than a people to be known. But our tradition is built on seeing differently, not from above, but from within, not with suspicion, but with compassion. We are taught to see Tselem Elokim, the image of God, in every human being, to bless where others might curse, to walk even though the valley of the shadow of death, and still carry light with us. While physically, emotionally, and psychologically intense the 2 weeks was, these 2 weeks we spent together as a traveling community were filled with so much light that I know each of us will carry with us in our future journeys and beyond. Parshat Balak reminds us that even in moments of hatred, the Jewish story does not end with a curse. Balaam's words became a part of our daily liturgy. We took the curse and we turned it into a literal blessing, the very first thing we say when we enter a shul, just as what we must do with our memories of the Shoah. To walk through the camps is to walk through the shadows of Parshat Balak, through a world where people try to curse us out of existence, but to leave those camps with tears and testimony, with song and silence, with renewed commitment and determination to give our and future generations a better Jewish life, that is the blessing. That is a transformation. That is a Jewish response. May we continue to live the lives that invert curses, that testify to memory, and that embody the words, Ma tovu, Oho lecha, Beth Am. How good are your tents, Beth Am. Despite the numerous curses that so many of our own community members, ancestors experienced during the Shoah, Their examples and their memories are not only a profound blessing, but their legacies also live on through their great and great-great-grandchildren, who Naz and I are privileged to say that our daughters are classmates and friends with at Preston Academy. How fortunate are we that we get to share in each other's blessings and each other's histories, and know that our most valuable assets, our benayach and our benayach, our children and our builders, will continue to add to our storied tradition and hopefully transform future challenges and problems and curses into perpetual solutions and blessings. Even in the darkest of places, we carry our tents, places of learning, of spirit, of hope. And as long as we walk together, and as long as we remember and rebuild, no curse will ever define us. As we enter the 3 weeks starting tomorrow, a period when we reflect on the many curses, dark times, and sinat chinam, baseless hatred that cause our people's downfalls, my question to myself and to each of us here is the following. Despite how much destruction and how many curses our people have absorbed generation after generation, and despite how much increased hostility towards Israel and anti-Semitism we face today, what are we each willing to do to raise our level to be a blessing, to do a mitzvah, and to extract meaning and holiness and godliness even in the toughest of times? We may not be able to control what comes our way like the Israelites did not have in the desert, but we know that we can always do the right thing and forever be a blessing.